good. All right. What's your favorite cereal?
I don't have one because I don't eat cereal.
Oh,
I don't like milk.
okay.
You know what I mean? So it's never. But when I was a kid, sometimes I would eat like Cinnamon Toast Crunch in a little bag or something like that. But
Okay.
I never was a cereal girl.
No cereal. Wow. All right. Then what's your go-to breakfast then? Because that's usually when you eat it. But we've had dinners for cereal. So
Yeah. Probably coffee.
Okay.
Cheers.
the breakfast of champions.
Yeah, but I'm not really a breakfast person.
Okay.
So coffee is like my go-to.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way, actually. And they say it's the most important, but I'm like, well, there's two others, right?
Yeah. I think they just say that. I don't.
Yeah. All right. Very good. We'll never ask the cereal question again. Great. So thank you. That's good. So, welcome back to the Ministry Without Hating It podcast, a ministry of Odyssey Haven coaching and counseling dedicated to the pursuit of answering the question, is it possible to do ministry without hating it? We have a theory that it just might be. I'm here with my dude, Brenton.
What's up?
How are we doing today?
I'm doing good. I've had a few cups of coffee, ready to roll.
Which is a little scary for the rest of your day because this is the middle of the day.
Yeah, I'll just keep, once I'm up, I just got to keep it going.
You just got to keep it going.
Yep.
Just got to keep that moving.
What'd you have for lunch today, Brenton? Coffee?
Huh. Interesting. I'm not going to get lunch today because we're doing this through lunch. We have something even right after this that, trying to front load stuff for the summer and everything. Super fun. I think this sufficiently acts as the pre-setup nonsense that's in the show notes as we go through this.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about today's episode?
Yep.
Yep.
Let's do it.
Yep. Let's do that. Let's do that. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited. Brenton, I know you're excited to get to today's conversation with our friend, Pastor Nina Sims. Man, she really, as she unpacks this, just her own story, and then also how that ties into her ministry story and what God has done in the spaces in between and continues to do in her. It's just really, really encouraging to me. I really walked away from this one just feeling like, yep, this is doable. Would you agree with that?
I would, and I'd say that every time we do one of these interviews, I feel like I went to therapy again and unpacked my own life in regards to someone else's story, and it's helped me be a better leader just for being present and listening.
Yeah. Well, and I'll not to spoiler alert too much here, but even as she describes herself in the way that she interacts with others, we ask her that. She doesn't give that freely, obviously. It really does match and align with why we would see even the fruit within her ministry and just the things that they continue to do there in Detroit, Michigan. And so we are really, really excited for you to listen to this conversation. And we hope that you enjoy just as much as we did our interview with Pastor Nina Sims. Well, it is our privilege to welcome Pastor Nina Sims to the Ministry Without Hating It podcast. Nina, you're here. You made it. Welcome.
Yay. I made it to the podcast.
You made it to the podcast, and you might be the first person to actually say "yay" when I say welcome. Usually they're just like, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and we're just like, are you really? It's kind of like that Chick-fil-A, right?
This might be the pinnacle of success right here.
And when he says that, he means for us, because we finally have you on the podcast. That's what he means when he says that. Yeah. So we like to start these out by asking questions that have nothing to do with ministry, but need to be asked anyways. And so one of our new favorite questions is, describe yourself in 3 words.
I would describe myself as calm, considerate, and compassionate. But it's funny, when I thought about these questions, I even ask my kids, like, how would you describe me? How would you describe?
That could be scary.
I'm just curious because I wanted to see if I describe myself, maybe as someone close to me would describe myself, would describe me. So, and besides the considerate, they were compassionate, loving, caring. So all good stuff, of course.
That's good. But go.
I was going to say, you did the pastor thing. You did the 3 C's here.
That's right.
I didn't. You know what? I didn't even realize that until you said it. I sure did.
Listen,
that was not intentional. That was not intentional.
I tell people all the time, anytime a pastor comes up with the alliteration and all the letters match, God's heart smiles. So yeah. I think you're just fine. I think you're just fine.
Yeah. Thank you.
I did have a follow-up with that though. Did any of your kids actually echo the word calm?
No, they didn't say calm, but I was just, they were saying patient, that I'm patient, which I feel like that's kind of could fall into calm.
Okay.
Yeah. Just quiet, with things. I'm not a quiet person, but like with certain situations, I can be the calm.
Good. No, that's important. You need to have that in the family. You got to have a stabilizer. So that's totally fine. What would you do if you knew that you couldn't fail? Like, what would be something that you would do if you knew that there was no fail?
That's a good question because I don't feel like I don't do something with fear of failing. I'm doing something every day that I could possibly fail in. So I guess just showing up, like if there's really not like something that comes to mind when I think about this question. Okay. Because I don't necessarily have a fear of failing. Yeah. I just do it. And if I fail, I fail. If I do good, I do good. But I don't think there's anything that I would do right now that failure is preventing me from doing it, or the fear of failing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a thing in our house that I think my dad instilled in me, but it was really just, you can do anything, even if you don't know how to do it, there's a way to do it. And that like produced something inside of me that was like, all right, let's go. Whatever it is that I think of, like it can be done.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, like, I don't have like quotes that I remember like growing up, but just how I just persevered a lot. Like I just felt like if I put my mind to it, I can do it. And even if I messed up, I would still figure it out. So I never felt like, I could fail at it. I just would try it. And if it didn't work, it just didn't work, which is failure, but not, I guess failure is a thought. It's how you view failure. I think
we say fail forward, right? So if you're going somewhere with it, if you learn something from it, then it was a good thing. And maybe not a failure, but a growing opportunity or whatever.
So I guess another way to ask the question is, what would I do if my age wasn't a factor?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like, what would I go back and do if I, because I feel like I'm just in a stage of my life that I would love to go back and do this, but I just feel like I'm too old for that,
Okay.
That I could see more of, I don't want to do it. Not because I feel like I would fail at it. I just feel like maybe I'm just in a season of my life. I just don't have the mental capacity to do it. So for an example, I really wanted to be a nurse. And I said, you know what? I really would like to go back to school and maybe do nursing, but I'm like close to this certain age that I'm not going to share. And it's like, who does that? Who goes back to school and to do this? And, so that kind of, that thought kind of comes to mind.
Okay, so this is also a first. I've never had a guest juxtapose and reframe a question just like that. And that was actually great. And I also want to point something else out because Lindsay gives me a hard time about this all the time, about the light stuff up front. But I would posit that we get some of the really deep stuff right off the bat with some of these, because you were just like, I'm just thinking there, like no fear of failing. It just didn't work. You know what I mean? Like, for someone like me, that's a driving fear, and it's also how I'm wired within that, and it actually can hold me back from doing things. And I'm just curious. I want to just dive into that just a little bit deeper, because one of the other questions was, where do you feel most courageous, or when? And I'm wondering how that plays into how you're wired within the fear of failure. And I'm not afraid of that.
Yeah. I think where I feel most courageous is just everyday life is the right doing, especially when it comes to ministry. If we're just kind of, even being a mom, I think too, like just doing stuff I don't necessarily feel confident or maybe not have full experience or doing, or feel I might have some insecurities about it, being a mom or being a pastor or leading groups of people or speaking in front of people. That be strong and courageous, what the Bible says, so showing up every day is, I feel like I'm being courageous, because every day there's something I feel like I don't necessarily feel qualified or feel worthy of doing, or I don't know how to handle it. I have kids that are all these different ages right now, and sometimes they have issues or problems or conversations that I don't feel like I'm equipped to handle. And I got to courageously show up to the conversation or courageously show up to handle the problem. And it's just really like using the word that I've learned in real life action every day. So that's, for me, that's just showing up every day to whatever my day might bring, because there's something in my day that I don't feel like I'm capable or qualified to handle all the time.
Wow. Questionnaire kickoff for the win. I'm telling you right now, that's some good stuff. And actually, I want to get into that. I want to almost put a pin in that, because I'm curious how that fits into your ministry journey and story. But I've got this really, really hard hitting question that I've got to ask you first. I'm just dying to know, would you rather have every traffic light turn green or always have the best parking spot?
Of course, green.
Okay.
I don't mind doing the walking. I like green lights. I don't like red lights. So green all day.
That's the hard hitting, groundbreaking stuff. That's what the listeners tuned in for.
Yeah. So the podcast is over now. You guys know what I like.
We peaked. We're done. Shortest episode ever. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh man. Let me pivot to this, and then we'll kind of, I want to come back to what we just talked about a little bit. What do you find? And I wonder if this actually ties into some of what we've just talked about too. What do you find exciting, or what are you looking forward to right now?
What I'm looking forward to, I'm not sure if you guys know, but my oldest daughter is pregnant. So I am excited about
Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So it's my first grandbaby. So it's my oldest daughter having my first grandbaby. So that's all we talk about right now. Our kids talk about it. My husband talks about it. I talk to her every day about it. So that is upcoming excitement and planning that I'm doing, because she lives in another state. So there's some intentional planning that I have to do to be present for her and, and take care of things here. So that's what I'm excited about right now.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations again.
Thank you.
And I was with Antonio last week, and he brought that up. That was one of his wins and his highs. Yes. So I know it's a big deal. You guys, what's crazy is that you're way too young to be grandparents, and so I'm not even sure how that's possible.
Yeah.
So
start young.
Good job. Good on you. Good on you.
You'll be the fun grandparents though, because you're going to be younger and going after it.
And we really could have been grandparents a lot younger. My daughter's 28.
Oh, wow. So really it's her fault.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I'm glad it's this time though, because to your point, I don't want to be a grandma and raising little kids at the same time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's go back to kind of what we were talking about with the fear of failing and that kind of a thing. And I know you've got a unique, story, but also ministry story as well. So I'm curious if you could tell us how you found yourself where you are right now, because you're leading the church that you guys planted now, but it wasn't always that way. But maybe take us back a bit about where this all even began for you, ministry in general, and just your story.
So where I'm at today, I feel like it's like a red big old ball that fell in my lap. But how I got here is a lot of, highs and lows and everything. But as far as just the beginning, my ministry story is when I gave my life to Christ, I was really like on fire, like transformed, but I had no church background. So honestly, I didn't know what all that looked like at the beginning. I just thought you go to church, you go to the Bible studies, you go every time it's open, you just show up, right?
Okay.
So I thought that is what it is to be saved, like honestly, I just didn't know. And I started having like dreams and different things, actually, even before I got, I gave my life to Christ, but I still thought, oh, I'm going to be a missionary. I'm probably going to go to these places and do all this stuff. But I didn't know what leadership looked like or all that part of ministry, as far as leading from that perspective, I share my story and I, talk about Jesus, but as far as like in front of people and the behind the scenes stuff, I never even thought about.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, just moving forward, I get married to Antonio, who at that time, again, he's, just a good old Christian going to church, all the things, not necessarily a minister.
Mm-hmm.
We start working with the youth together. I didn't know he was going to be a pastor, all that stuff.
He duped you.
Yeah, he kind of, and if I would have known, and this is important, if I would have known this was where I was going to, I don't know if I might have had the fear, more of that fear of, especially without having the word or the understanding behind a lot of things, I would probably would have just been a mess. Okay.
Right.
Sure.
And
sure.
So the Lord knows how to deal with me and how to get me where he needs me to be. Okay.
Yep.
That's for sure. So fast forward, my husband, we're serving and we were youth ministers. And even then, I just doing a lot with my husband, whatever. I'm just like, I have a natural gift of helps. I serve, behind the scene. Anything the church needed, I was cleaning it, just everything, anything you could think of, I was doing it, but more of a quiet server, not necessarily very vocal. Okay. So, fast forward, my husband, tells me, hey, Nina, I feel called to be a pastor. And, I just was quiet, just listened and
calm,
prayed, calm, very calm. Because I've learned through some experiences that with the Lord is not to speak so quickly about what I'm not going to do or what I don't want to do or say no so quickly.
That's wisdom.
The Lord has corrected me earlier on about certain things. Yeah. And so I just learned just to kind of let it sit for a while. And my husband is when he has something in his mind to do, he's going to do it. And, and we were young. And so just moving past all the things, how we got to that point. Well, my husband planted, and of course I plant with him, right? I'm his wife. I'm just his wife. I'm doing ministry, but I didn't necessarily consider myself I didn't call myself pastor. They called me like Lady Nina, Sister Nina. You know what I mean? Like just because of our background.
I was going to say, give us context to where that is, because you're right. That is very cultural and even contextual.
So we come from a different denomination, and even church planning, that grammar, that vocabulary, we didn't even hear often. Okay. So, the women are not considered, could not be a pastor. You were a missionary or evangelist, but you couldn't be a pastor. Okay. So when my husband finally said that he felt like this is the time that we're going to start True Worship Church, I just kind of followed that, I'm Lady Nina, that's what they called me. And I just, whatever that means, I didn't care. You can call me Lady Nina, Miss Nina, Sister Nina. It didn't matter. But they didn't call me Pastor Nina. So then, we planted, and there's a lot of things in that. And I don't know if you want to hear all that, really.
Oh, of course. You better believe it. Oh, you better believe it. I want to compare battle scars if we could.
Okay.
That would be great.
So, and then some of the questions you asked were kind of around the church planning piece, but we started with me, my husband, and my 6 kids. Okay. Who at that time were 2 teenagers, and then the youngest were 6-month-old twins.
Oh, wow.
And then a 2-year-old, a 4 or 5-year-old, and then 2 teenagers. And my teenage son was audio drummer.
Uh-huh.
He was a drummer. My daughter was a singer. She was the praise and worship. She was like 12, 13. She was praise and worship. She was the dancer. She taught dance. And then the twins, of course, they just showed up and they were the nursery. Yeah, they were cute. And I served everything outside of the preaching part. Like I served the children's ministry. I was over the dance. I was over mime. I was over usher, like all the functions.
So holding it together, basically.
Holding it together.
Yeah. Yep. That's big.
And it was big. And then still never really seen myself necessarily like having a desire to do, or knowing that what was going to come down the line, and then when we first started our church, we were not full Foursquare. We were what they call like an
associate
church.
Mm-hmm. So our friends of Foursquare.
Yeah. So our
it's
church
all changed, but yes. Uh-huh.
So our denomination that we came out of, our pastor at that time, he sought out Foursquare, and we were like associated with Foursquare, but we were not, because of all the stuff. It's just so many different things why we were not full, because we already had a building, like all that stuff. So we used Foursquare for licensing and different things like that, and then we did fellowship with the Foursquare churches in Michigan. So, we had these monthly meetings that we would go to. My husband started our ministry again with our 6 kids, and then a few people that said, hey, I would love to be part of. So we started in our house, right? Just kind of having conversations. Again, no coaching, no mentoring, just I was 32 years old. He's 37 years old, like young, not a lot of experience. And hey, we're going to rent this church, which was a Foursquare church, at 4 p.m. We started on a 4 p.m. on Sundays, which was very hard.
Yeah.
Anyone who knows is pastoring on a Sunday.
I do. Yes, actually. Yes. As a very church plant, even. Yeah. It's not, It's not easy. You're right.
Yeah. So, and then, we did that for a year. We rented there for about a year. And then my husband, this is that patient part of me, that calm, right? My husband was like, man, we got to get to a morning service. Like we got to, and so he began and I said, well, no, because he was like, maybe we should go rent a hotel, or maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that, all these different things. And I was like, no, we just really need to wait. Like, let's just wait. And then, and God he was in all of that, because one of our greatest stories, which is one of your questions about what is this like this crazy thing that God did that is totally unforgettable, and such a big faith, like letting us know we were right where we were supposed to be, is that a year later, after we started the church, the district supervisor at that time, or the area supervisor, I don't know what they were called at that time, said that he was, there's a lot more, but I'm just kind of giving you a fast version of the story.
That's fine. Yeah.
Praying and asked, my husband was like, he just felt God saying, we're going to be in Warren or Ferndale, and which is metro, like right outside of the city of Detroit. And so my husband would drive around, because we didn't have service until 4. He would drive around in Ferndale and Warren and just look at places and stuff like that. And then there was a church that was empty, and it was in Ferndale, and he went and looked. He's like, man, this would be amazing, Lord, if you give this to me. And he looked, and it was a sign that some risen ministry, but it was a Foursquare church. Okay. So he asked the supervisor about it, the area leader, and the leader said, it was vacant or whatever. And but he didn't say anything else about it. It wasn't like it was we can give that to you, or he was just like, oh, okay. And then he didn't say nothing. So Antonio didn't say nothing, and we just kind of kept on looking and going about our day-to-day stuff. So then about a month or so later, his name was Ken Author. I don't know if you know who that is.
I do. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. He called Antonio, and he was like, hey, if I was to give you this church, would you take it? And my husband was like, yeah, definitely, And he said, well, me and my wife were praying about who to give the church to, and your face, God showed me your face.
Wow.
And so, okay, so now we're here, right? They're giving us the keys to the building. Steve Reisman comes, and Dan Munt, like some leaders come, and they hand over the keys. And it's a beautiful facility. The church was awesome, good location right off the front. I mean, just what you can ask for, right? Paid for, no mortgage. I mean, all the things, right? And so he's getting ready to leave, and he's like, oh, wait a minute, Antonio, I have some keys here. The church comes with a parsonage. And me and my husband, well, I wasn't with him when this happened, but I didn't know what a parsonage was. I mean, sorry, I just didn't know that language. And my husband said he didn't really know what that language was neither. He was like, a parsonage, He's like, yeah, it comes with the house. It comes with the parsonage. So he's thinking like, oh, well, where's the house? So the house was in Warren. So the church was in Ferndale and the house is in Warren. So when we started ministry, we sold our house.
Yeah.
Because my husband left his job to do this.
Yeah.
So, you guys know you're pastors. There's not a lot of income.
Sure.
so when you start, this is, I'm stepping out faith and silver and gold have I not, so we sold our house, and we have 8 people at this time living in our house. Like all my kids are home and a dog. So we sold our house and now we're trying to find somewhere to rent.
Yeah.
Okay. So we find this house, we're renting this house, and it's just, okay, all of us are in this small house at this point. So at this point, when they gave them the keys to the house was right around the corner from the house we were renting.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And house is paid for.
Yeah.
The church was paid for. And man, that was just such a blessing to be able to start your ministry. Well, because we started a year and a half before that, but to really, I felt like that was the changing point where things started to really become like official for us. You know what I mean? Like things were moving in place. Certain burdens were kind of taken off of us. And it was my prayer, because when my husband said that he wanted to start the ministry, when he said he was leaving his job, I quietly just prayed, Lord, I don't want to be a church that has such a financial burden that we cannot do what you called us to do, because I feel like no matter what people say, if you're having a hard time paying bills, a lot of your motivation that's just always in the back of it's hard to freely, honestly, to go in a pulpit and be with people and they're not, and things are not financially coming in, or and your family depends on you and the church family depends. It's a lot. That's a big weight. And I've seen a lot of churches had to close because of that.
Yeah.
And so my prayer was like, Lord, if you're doing this for us, I need this. This is what Nina Sims needs. I need you. I don't want to have this financial burden over the church where we're begging people to help us pay this mortgage or pay rent. So you provide the finances in such a way that is, just wow, or you provide us a mortgage-free facility. And God did that.
It's amazing. Can I want to pause you for a second here, because I just see a theme. You talk about just showing up, you know what I mean? Yeah. And like, there's so much of that story, church planning alone, but like to have babies basically and be doing that. And then you're worrying about the finances and all that. But it's like, no, I hear God actually calling us to this and just showing up. No wonder you're not afraid of anything. Like that's incredible to me. And to even just, we're not even to where you're at now in this journey, but just to hear that portion, that's really encouraging, even for me, even now, that's most of the time what God calls us to do. And that's just to show up.
Just to show up. And not that it's easy. I mean, of course, you guys could read between the lines of that story. There was a lot of fasting and praying and crying and questions, Lord, but also in the same time, I'm moving in spite of how I feel about something, understanding that God don't always show you it things until you do the thing that he's telling you to do. Mm-hmm. So as you go, I will show, you know what I mean? Like, so if you do this, we didn't we didn't know we were going to get keys to a church and a house, right? But if we would have never stepped out and walked away from our job like God told us to do, or to go to these meetings, the day that my husband was given like this, when Ken talked to him about this, it was actually at a meeting. He pulled Tony outside and had this conversation. We had a very hard family day with a situation happened in our family. That was a very stressful moment, right? On the day of the meeting, where we could have easily said, we're not going to go to this meeting. It was a horrible day. It was a stressful day. It was an emotional day, but my husband still was like, no, we're going to go. So me and him, because and the reason why he said we're going to go because we had people that were coming with us and he didn't want to let them down. So really, if it was just us, we probably would have stayed home. But because we had people that were coming with us, it kind of forced us to go anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that to say, like, the day, I felt like it was looking back, even at that moment, the enemy is always trying to turn your focus, or just, kind of make you afraid to go, or give you a reason not to go, or not to be present, or not to show up, to miss out on certain opportunities that, that he might be able to kind of see, okay, this is God's getting ready to do this. Let me kind of intervene, or even though he doesn't know all the plans of the Lord, but you know what I mean? Like, he's just trying to continue to make it harder for you to show up, and to show up in the right mental space, because even when my husband left his job, as soon as he said he was going to leave his job, and he turned all the paperwork in, and he was still working, but he had an exit date, I found out I was pregnant with twins.
Yeah.
So it was. So then he even
stressful.
Yeah, right. Like, and I'm not saying that me being pregnant was from the enemy or anything. I'm just saying that was this, like, oh, are you sure? You sure you want to leave your? And that's even, and that's what my husband, when I got off the phone with him, I called him. I'm like, are you sitting down? Because I was early pregnant. Like, I knew immediately that something was wrong. And I was like, man, I'm pregnant with twins. And he's crying, I'm crying. We're like laughing. And he already left his job. And then he got off the phone. He said that he went and prayed, like, Lord, are you sure? You sure you want me to leave my job? And he was like, the Lord was like, just don't doubt me,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And God took care of us. We had insurance for a certain amount of time, like about a year, after we left the job. So all the things were covered, but it wasn't easy. Now, it wasn't, it was a character thing happening. It was a stripping happening. It was a trust that was being developed in areas in our life that we have not had to trust him in.
Yes.
So there was this process that a lot of people don't get to see. They just see it. Oh, you got a church. Oh, you got a house. Oh, this. They just see all this. Oh, you got a building. You got some people.
Yeah.
But they don't know all this process of dying to self.
That's good.
And to, really being transformed, even in ways that you are not comfortable and are not easy.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing. Gosh, there's so many times I just think like I'm a destination guy, point A to point B. And how many times even, I've had other people remind me, but the Lord is specifically like what you're talking about, that no, the journey is the destination, and that's where the work actually takes place. And so many times we want to get to what we think success or what this vision should look like, and we want to just skip over and jump over those things. But you're right. It's, no, it's in that, and I got to show up to that just as much as I do, the hard stuff.
Yeah, no, it's true. You got to show up wherever God is calling you to show up. If it's 2 people or 200 people, if it's to a whatever, the lack and the flowing with milk and honey, you got to show up in the same posture, same assurance that he's called me to this.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, none of this stuff matters really. It's just about me walking out. You know what I mean? Like some stuff
Absolutely.
It doesn't even matter. Like even like fast forward to where I'm at today.
Okay. Yeah. I was about to say, yeah. So you got in the space, and how long were you guys?
Because all that helped develop my faith and really just helped me really grow in understanding God the Father, like how he has us, and he really built my faith. And I thank God for my husband just walking out, because I'm sure it was just seeing him kind of walk that out, as well, and God doing it. And so I got to the point, even when we were doing this, is that, okay, Lord, the place that I'm in my life right now, even before I became a senior pastor, is because I said yes. I said yes to things I did not want to say yes to. I said yes to things that I did not feel qualified. I said yes to a lot of stuff that I would have never said yes to, So when this, here I am today now, 2.5, 3 years almost of being a senior leader. A year before this happened, we were in Dallas, and it was during COVID, and we were there my husband was on the board or whatnot. So he had some meetings and stuff. And somehow we started talking about, if something happened to him, how would I feel about taking over the church? And I said, well, let me back up. A year before, even like when we were still in Ferndale, because now this is the time we're in Detroit, but when we were in Ferndale, we would have teams come and I would be, helping them get situated, like just, things for the church. And we had Hamtramck. So we planted in Hamtramck. So we were doing ministry there, working with IHC, and we would have these teams come, missionary teams and leaders come in, and they would say, well, why are you not licensed? And I'm like, I'm not a pastor. I'm just Lady Nina. I'm just doing this. No, you need to get licensed. God is like, there's something you need to do that. You need to do it now. And I'm like, no, not really. Yeah. And I even brought it up to my husband. He's like, well, I don't understand why he's saying you're doing all the stuff. I'm like, yeah, I don't really need that. So anyway, okay.
And that's licensed to be pastoral license.
Pastoral license. I just never felt like I really needed that at that time. Okay. So fast forward. So we are in Dallas and he's asked me this question, and immediately I wanted to say, no, I don't. I mean, we have so-and-so that can do it. So-and-so can be a past, they can lead it. And I didn't say anything. In my mind, I was saying all this stuff, but I was just like, I don't know what I would do until I'm in that situation. I would have to because I was thinking like if something happened to him, not like, oh, he transitions to a different role. I just thought like if my husband got really sick or if he passed, something like that, what would I do with True Worship Church?
You were licensed pastor at that point.
Yes, at that point I did become licensed.
So this is a legit conversation then. Yeah,
yes,
we're just like
So he's like, would you take over? Would you want to? Would you just asking me how I would show up or what would I do? Yeah. So I said, I don't know, because even though I was I just didn't know about senior. That's still different. Right? It's just different.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so he asked me that. And so then fast forward, here we are. This situation comes up with my husband being offered this role. And so we sat down, we had a conversation. He's like, Nina, I can't do this and pastor. And I want you to know, you don't have to say yes. I totally get it about taking over True Worship.
Okay, and what was the role that he had been offered or was transitioning to? So, for those that don't know.
Okay, so at first, he thought he was going to be an assistant supervisor.
Okay.
And for those who don't know, there was a big transition going on with the organization, and a lot of we didn't know what was all going on at that time. It was just normal. Yeah. Somebody was going to be moving out of an assistant, a supervisor position. So he was asked if he would consider or would he like to be part of like an assistant to the supervisor at that time. He was super excited about that. Sure. Yeah. Like, he prayed about it, of course, but he was like, yeah, so we talked about that first. Right. And then, so the conversation about me becoming senior pastor, it kind of started then.
Okay.
Before he was, and then of course, like a couple weeks later, or maybe a month, not even, this whole other thing came up where he was offered a job as a supervisor.
And this is for a district for those who aren't. So over several states, pastor to pastors, basically.
Yes. So he was offered to be the supervisor of our district, and so then it became really like, Nina, I can't be a senior pastor and be the supervisor over the district. We have such a large district, over 300 churches. I don't know how many pastors, tons of them. And so he was like, again, Nina, I want you to know you don't have to do this, because we do have people in our ministry that could have took over.
Okay.
And he said, but I feel led that it's you. I feel like God's saying that it's you, but I want you to, I'm totally fine if this is not what you want to do. And
how did that land for you? I'm just curious, like in that moment when he's saying that, what do you...
I felt sick to my stomach.
And that's the right response. Good job.
Yes,
that's good.
I felt sick to my stomach. And you know why? Because when he was saying it, I knew the Lord was saying it's you. But immediately I was still trying to no, that's not me. I definitely don't have that capacity, And I said, well, I'm going to pray about it. And he's like, okay, again, Nina, you don't have, he was very clear, Nina, you don't have to do this. Church will be fine if you don't do it. And I said, well, so anyway, I think I took about a week because I already knew immediately. I just didn't say it.
Yeah.
And and I just took a few days, and it was a lot. It was a lot of I felt like all these insecurities started kind of coming up that I didn't really necessarily ever feel before.
Yeah.
And
this is also in the middle of the pandemic. Am I right?
During the yes, it was the middle of the pandemic.
So there's also that on top of everything else.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, our church is not even meeting in person. Okay. And you want me.
Right.
And I'm such a different type of leader than my husband, and not in a bad way. Like sure. I am.
We're laughing because we know him. So go ahead.
Yes. He's, he's like he's great. Like he kind of can shoot out stuff, and he comes up with these, 5-year plan, like these plans. He's just really he's good at the administrative, the business side of things, also just in tune to certain things where I am not the greatest planner. Okay. Like 5-year plans, those never have worked for me. Okay. Nina, give me your plan in 10 years. I don't know. Like,
oh, that was one of our questions.
I'm sorry. Like, just cross that out.
I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Keep going.
And I'm challenged. I'm not saying like, these are areas that I feel like I've had to try to work through, but why am I like, why don't I think like that? I'm more of this compassion, and I'm just in a feely, if that makes sense. I don't know. So anyway, it was in the beginning, right? So I just felt like, I preached here and there. Now going from preaching here and there to preaching every Sunday and doing Bible study every week, that's a lot, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's just one part, that's just one part of it, right? Yeah. So anyway, I came to him and I said, yeah, I feel like, and I was crying. I was like, yeah, I just feel like the Lord is saying it's me. And I even said, well, maybe just a year. Like maybe the Lord just wants me to be a transitional person, someone that's helping the transition. And my husband was quiet. He didn't say nothing about that. So and then, I started to walk in it. And immediately I really felt the weight of it immediately. Like immediately I share this with a lot of people that I felt like, when you go to the restaurants and it's kind of dark in the room, you got that light kind of hanging over you. Just in the rest, I felt like the Lord all of a sudden was shining this bright light into my life. That was really revealing things that just needed to be revealed that were in me that, that he wanted me to kind of be aware of and work on. And some of that is like even the planning or even some of the insecurities that I was feeling that I never had before. I never had felt certain things. I've kind of always leaned into my areas of fault, like laugh, make jokes about it. Like I mess up words a lot. I've always kind of make jokes. I'm like, if you laugh later, you can laugh now type of person. Like there's nothing, I don't get too embarrassed, and the Lord really freed me from caring what other people think a long time ago. So, amazing. But all of a sudden I started feeling some of that. Like, yes. And then I started kind of taking on, they need somebody better. I'm not going to lead them to where they need to go. And, just all that stuff. And, I actually started to I went to the WIML right around that time.
Which stands for those
women
Western.
Western. See, you don't even know.
No, you're right.
Women in ministry leadership.
There you go.
Yeah, and I did the one in Arizona with Pastor Marion, and that was such a crucial time in my life of doing that and taking on the role. And it was really, it was very healthy for me to do that at that time because I needed that more than I knew that I needed it. And I was able to kind of, talk through things or like, what am I feeling? What is this, And then of course, our church just, my husband's, having some feelings about me being a woman in leadership. I mean, these people love me and everything, but our culture, again, is a culture that women shouldn't be the senior leader, or we love you as Lady Nina or Pastor Nina serving along. And my voice was always respected in our church, but there was some like pushback, like, and it was a lot from women, which is strange, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And but no one left the church. And they still support, but I know there's this thing there still probably with that they might wrestle with or struggle with themselves. But So taking over the church in a time that was one pandemic. Again, I'm in the Detroit east side. I'm on the east side of Detroit. I'm in a very urban area. I am like the 1%. Okay. I am a white female pastor in a predominantly African-American community. Mm-hmm. And our church looks like our community, Yeah. So there's maybe like 5 of us. Okay. Others. And I don't have a problem with that. I am not intimidated. I'm a military kid. I am very well. That doesn't bother. It's just different. There's some hardships with that that I have to be sensitive to and aware of, where maybe other people may not have to be aware of that.
Absolutely.
So I just feel like I'm here because I said yes. Yeah. I said yes. And I showed up, and the Lord says, Nina, there's some things that he knows I would never do just by him even asking me. He almost has to like drop it on me all the time. Like pretty much all the things that I've grown in the things of God in my ministry and the things that the Lord has blessed me to do is because it's just something I said yes to, and I didn't really feel like I was qualified or really necessarily seen myself doing.
Yeah. That's an incredible story, number one. And even just because this is what, 3, you said 3.5 years now?
No, about going on 3 years, 2.5, 3 years.
Going to 3, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I even remember just seeing through social media, like your installation was all entirely online because you guys still weren't meeting, which is a whole nother layer. And just incredible how God continues to just reveal himself to be faithful as you are faithful to step out and to show up.
Yeah.
You mentioned something I don't want to gloss over because I think it's really important. Because you have a couple of layers here that a lot of people, maybe even listening, don't have to deal with when it comes to ministry. And you mentioned there's the cultural context of the view of, a woman in ministry leadership, specifically as the senior pastor. And I'm curious how you have learned to navigate that portion, but then also even some of the cultural context that you've got, like you said, being the minority in some regards, where you're at and where God has positioned you to be. And you've said, God freed me of these things. I still deal with the insecurities though, and those are the attacks that come as you're stepping up. I'm curious, how have you learned to navigate that?
Yeah, I just, again, through seeing his faithfulness over my life, and really just remembering my why. Why am I even here? Why did I say yes in the first place to Jesus? Okay. Not to the things, right? Yeah. But just to the person.
Yeah.
And because I said yes to the person, if he has me in these places, I believe with all my heart, there's a purpose in it. If anything, it may not be what I think it is or what I want it to be, but it's definitely a purpose, either to get me somewhere, to help someone else, to be influential, to show people, to see people, whatever. I don't really know why, right? But I know my why. So I always kind of keep that, why am I doing this? And who am I doing it for? And what am I doing?
Yeah.
And where is the motive of my heart concerning all the things? So even with I just trust too that God's not surprised about any of it. So me being a woman and this ministry and this culture context and all the things, I might be kind of having all but God's not like, oh, I'm surprised Nina's over here with this church, so,
yes.
And then I utilize people because I utilize people in the ministry to kind of help with some of that, like the men that are, to be a voice, because even and me and my husband talk about this, even as being a senior leader, I feel like, man, it's different when you have to speak to something in a man as a woman.
Yes.
From a woman. I think
absolutely.
I kind of lead that. Hey, I tell my husband, hey, I think you should talk to them about this.
Yeah.
Because it's just different, right? Like it's just, and we can say, well, it shouldn't be different and all that, but the reality is it is different.
That's right.
And I'm not going to force something on I just, force myself onto something just because it shouldn't be this way, right? Like I should be able to speak into this and they should be able to hear me just as well as they hear my husband. But the reality is I have to really use wisdom of how to navigate conversations and utilize the men that are in the ministry to help speak to some of the things with about men, concerning men things, just like women. There's some things that women need women to speak to. And not that, the voice of the man is not respected and all that, it is, but there's some things that only another woman could really speak to.
That's right.
So it's navigated through a lot of prayer, a lot of conversations with other people, just kind of, hey, how do you navigate it? Like learning from other people's experiences, even if I don't use the way that they do it, just hearing other ways to, other perspectives of how they've navigated or what's worked for them. And then just being comfortable, like really knowing who I am. I think part of the insecurities that I started like, who am I? Who am I in Christ Jesus? All of a sudden I had all these questions, and I actually went to my husband, like all of a sudden I feel like I don't know who I am. And I think it's because I did not know who I was in this role. Like as a senior, like I never had to operate. I have not been here before. And even though I've done all the things alongside or led things constantly, but to take on the mentality, I am the person, it brought on a lot of, well, who am I? And the Lord had to kind of almost reestablish. And that's why the Wimmel was good for me, to reestablish me in my identity in him, that I'm a daughter. Like, who am I? Like, and why am I doing this? And kind of, and not let my thoughts take me to places that God's never really, he's not calling me to. And it's really a distraction from the work that's in front of me.
Yeah.
I'm called to love, I'm called to serve, and I'm called to be myself and not try to be like anyone else or be what I think people need me to be. Right. Because of the context, or because I'm a woman. And so now I got to show up as a different type of woman, because I want them to see me as the strong woman leader instead of just Nina Sims or,
Yeah. Well, I love that, because it's incredibly practical in a lot of ways. Number one, like you said, and good for you to really tie that back to the identity of who you are and really who has placed you where you are. Because I think that's something that, I don't care what, gender, race, role that you're in, when it comes to ministry, if we don't have that, it's going to be an uphill battle all the way.
Yeah. It's going to be hard.
Yeah. But also too, like to lean into your team in a different way, because, and once again, doesn't matter gender or race, we can oftentimes just try to just put our head down and just plow in, or like you said, I got to be a different type of woman in these scenarios. It's like, well, no, I could just actually get somebody who I know could actually speak, the language maybe, or whatever, however you want to frame that, in a way that they would hear it. And, not only are you empowering somebody else, but it's also extending you. And I just think that's just something I don't hear a lot of, really, when you think of these kind of scenarios. I think it's amazing. Yeah.
Like the Lord, it doesn't have to be my voice. I delegate, it doesn't have to be me just because I'm the senior leader,
Right.
I don't have to be the one seen and heard all the time, like, so and I'm okay with that. Like, I don't have no power struggle there. Like, I just want to see whatever be accomplished.
Yeah.
And if, I just want to see whatever we're trying to accomplish be accomplished, and however God wants to do it, I'm okay with that. If it's coming from someone else using their voice or their skill and my idea, I'm fine with that. I don't have to be my idea, my voice, my thing.
Well, it's the confidence, once again, I go back to knowing who you are, right? And your identity, that allows you to be able to release that in others as well.
Yeah. And it's not easy.
No.
I mean, I'm sure you guys are pastors,
right.
That it's a daily thing, because, your flesh just is your flesh. And
that's right.
So, really being transformed, like really preaching what you like, being transformed by what you're preaching, being transformed by what you're reading, not just like, oh, this is a good scripture, or this, I have to be transformed by this as well. Right. Like, and that my life really at the end of the day is to influence others. Yeah. and show people like God sees them. Like you may not think you're qualified or you're able to do things, but if God qualifies you, if God calls you to do it or puts you in a room to do it, trust me, there's a reason why you're there. There's a reason why he has you doing it.
Yeah.
And the people need what you have. They need what you have. There's a season where they needed Antonio. There's a season where they need just like they need Nina Sims, and whenever the next person, and I'm okay with it, the transitions, meaning I'm on assignment. This is my assignment now. I'm open. If I say I have my time frame, but if the Lord said 20 years, okay, I'm praying, Lord, not 20 years, but if the Lord said that,
that's real. That's real. That's good.
But I'm also okay if he says 6 months, like, hey, Nina, now, this is like, I'm okay with letting things go and embracing whatever the next thing is too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that. Because my life, he has shown me to be so faithful. And that I have to trust him in these processes that are very uncomfortable and very hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Leading with open hands.
And they have been they have transformed me, not just like the things that I'm doing. I'm talking about in my heart, like I've been transformed. Like I'm more sensitive. I'm more compassionate. I'm more empathetic. I'm more at peace with a lot of things that are chaotic. There's just a deeper level of trust that I have learned through these experiences. So it's not about what I'm doing on a platform or what I'm doing over here or there. It's more of these things have helped me become more of who I am and who he's created me to be in myself. Like just being I'm trying to find the words, but just at peace with a lot of stuff, I should say.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you actually said that because I'm sitting here thinking, and this is something that because this is going to be audio, listeners cannot see, but I can actually see the earnestness in your eyes. Like this is not just something you're saying because it sounds like what you're supposed to say. Like this is actually, no, I've lived and learned this and now I know it. And I think you've got the words just fine, honestly, because it's good. It's good. It's really good.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. You're right. That's just it. And I think though, if we're talking about the journey being the destination, that's the point. Like the resistance and those things that struggles and things that we, try to reconcile in our own journeys, is, that's where God is doing the work and the transformation so that you can, in these other spaces, be able to live, right? But also to lead as you've been leading as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen.
That's good. That's really good. This might be the longest in an interview that we've done that we haven't asked the key question. And it's totally fine. This has been 100% amazing already. But I do want to ask this, and I want to frame it maybe a little bit differently than we normally would do, because usually we ask, what does the word ministry mean to you? I'm curious what it means to you today versus beyond a lot of this journey that you've been through, even more recently, if you'd like. But what is it now, and how is that different than what it used to be? Because you definitely came from an unchurched background, and here you are now. Yeah,
because when I first came, I didn't know what the word ministry even was. So
that's right.
Like, what is ministry? And the way I view ministry still is just being a vessel of help and serving, right? Like, so whatever I do ministry in my home, everywhere I go, I feel like I don't feel like ministry is off and on from it's this who I am, right?
Okay.
Looking for ways to serve or be helpful or to show Jesus in any moment or, just. So for me, what my process hasn't really changed my view of it now that, of course, over the time of knowing what ministry is to me, is that it's just being in a place where I'm serving and helping others and whatever that looks like, helping them transition, helping them get from one point to another point, helping, serving other people's vision, serving other people, who God has called. It's just really just, I don't know if it's really necessarily changed. Even as a pastor, I still feel like it's very sacrificial, selfless thing. Yes. But I think everyone who's called to Jesus, everyone who's said yes to the Lord, everyone who has accepted the gift of salvation should be doing ministry.
Yeah.
And it different capacities or different ways, but we all should be doing ministry once we've learned of his goodness and this gift of salvation that we have. So
that's good. Well said. So how does that tie to, because we talk, and we can, so oftentimes when we say ministry, you know, it's like it can be broader strokes. When you think of the things that you're passionate about in ministry, what are those things, and how have they translated then into ministry for you right now?
Yeah, I think for me, it's very personal because of what happened with me. I had a very, I felt the way that God touched my life, and the way that I felt his love and his conviction at the same time. Like, I want people to experience that. I want people to have this light moment, right, where they were, once was lost and now they're found, and a real experience with that, not just like this good cliche, oh, I was like when I look back over my life, I want that to mean something different for people, because that it means so much to me, and me being the background that I come from and the way that I kind of have navigated my life, and the Lord found me at 22 years old, single mom, and doing everything on her own, and he transformed me and by his love and kindness. And so I always I'm so passionate about people who feel broken, not seen, who struggle with things, to come on the other side of that. So of course I want people to know Christ. Like, that is always the ultimate goal, is that they accept the gift of salvation. But I want them to have an experience, an encounter with him that's life-changing, because he did that for me. And I feel like that's what's kind of always been that's what's kept me, that's that why. Like, man, I had this encounter and now I can never go back. I'm not saying I'm perfect, don't mess up, don't have these hard days, but because of this encounter with Jesus, I'll never go back to the way I was mentally, So I'm passionate about seeing people not see themselves as worthy or see themselves as valuable and loved and cared for, and feeling cared for, loved, seen, and valuable.
Wow. So how does that, let me we like to say now, thanks to Gary Donahue, double click on this, zoom in, right? What does that look like when you're, that's what's driving you? How does that play out?
Yeah, I'm very intentional. I call people. I mean, I sit with people a lot, right? It's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong, right? Like, it's really being present. When I'm at church, I'm being present in conversations. I'm being present. I'm trying to hear it's not being said. I'm asking because some people look like they don't need you, or they don't need to be seen. Because I looked like I had it all together. I had my, I wasn't walking around looking, crying. I mean, I was a very strong young woman, very independent, but I had a need that I couldn't even express that I needed.
Ooh,
right.
Okay.
And I needed an invite. And that's what happened. Somebody invited me to church, and I needed an invite. And all I needed was the invite, honestly, because when I got to church, this person that invited me didn't do nothing. As soon as they did altar call, I ran down there, got baptized, filled with the Holy Spirit.
Oh, wow.
All in the same day, just from one invite.
Fast tracked. Look at that.
Right. Like, no, for real. Like,
that's
and
good.
I mean,
and
I mean, of course I had things I had to kind of be delivered, like work through. But I mean, I was like, I was just, my heart was so tender. Yeah. And then I started to seek out this, I love God, but I want to love him the way the Bible tells me I need to love him. And I want to experience the love of God the way the Bible tells me that he loves me. So I kept going. So now I want people to do that. So how that looks in my life is just really showing them through the word, but sitting with people, spending time with them, listening to them, helping connect them to the resources they need, if that's therapy, help or whatever. But really speaking into them, like speaking into their life and what God has for them and what God says about them, their identity. It all goes back to reshaping, like let's go back to what God says about you and not what your life has said about you or you have said about yourself. So for me, it's just really trying to be present in the places that I show up to.
Yeah, I love that just keeps coming up. The just show up, and I just keep that's probably the episode title at this point. Yeah. But it's like, but it's so, man, it's so practical. Even what you're just talking about, like when I asked, okay, so how do you show others, what God has done and what you're passionate about? And you're like, I'm just with them. I'm just there, present, and walking alongside them, and invitation, as you mentioned there, that's actually one of our wins. One of the things that we celebrate is that, there's so many things that can come from just one simple invitation. That's not even just to a service. That's maybe just, hey, join me in this, or invite me into, or invite you to follow Jesus, right? That's such a key thing.
Yeah. You never know. You can look at people and think they may not want to be invited, or they may reject you or reject the invitation. But I have learned those are the ones that you need to invite, because they want to be seen, like somebody took time to invite them, or, you just never know what's going on in their life. Right now, we've had an increase of these young men come to our church. And, my son had a transition last year, and you guys might have seen on social media, where he accepted the Lord. And Josiah, who's 19, had an encounter where God just kind of called out to him, and on fire, right? And from this one yes, and then one invitation just can spread like a wildfire, right?
Yeah.
About 5-6 young men from his football team, non-church background, that's the goal, right? To get people that don't have a relationship, they don't know Christ, we don't want to take people from other churches. We want the ones who ain't going.
Sure.
And invite them in to his story, right? Like, this is what Jesus did for me, and I want him to do this for you, and come, and let God do what he does, right? Sometimes, and I learned this earlier, is like, sometimes you feel like you have to be the one that's doing all the transformation in them, but really God's just saying to love them, to invite them in, to invite them into what your passion, invite them into what you love. If I'm a good salesperson, right? Like, you going around, if I don't really love the product, it's going to show. And you invite them in, and they'll be curious enough to keep, and maybe some of those might just need the invitation, and they're going to run with it. And, and they might pass you by, and, so I think, man, we just overlook the simple things when it comes to the invitation and how we show up in a room with people. We think, oh, they don't care, or oh, they don't really want to hear this, and but you'd be surprised who God kind of puts you in a room with, who wants to hear your story, and not just the clean version of it, the polished version. Oh, they want to hear the process. And so.
Well, I think that's key too, and that's actually something I feel like the Lord has led me to be more and more aware of, is that any space or circumstance that I find myself in, even the ones that I didn't want to be in, or when things don't go the way I thought they should, God still brought me to that.
Yes.
Right. And so if that's the case, then I have to show up. I've got, like it's in my best interest, to be there.
Yeah.
In that space. That's good.
Yeah. Because that's where he's going to do what he wants the obedience. He just wants you to be obedient, so then he can show you what he's doing, so, so I love seeing people come alive, just with the word of God, and just through love and kindness have I drawn, like it is enough.
Yeah.
And it's a process, because it's not I know I've been there. Now, sometimes we're just not the most patient with other people's processes. Yeah. Like, man, how long are we going to be doing this? You know, but
that's so true. Yeah. That's so true.
You keep falling in that ditch.
Yeah. But I have to think about my own process. Yeah. I mean, I made a lot of poor choices for a long time, and I didn't listen to people. I did what I wanted to do, and that was my process for the Lord to get me to where I could hear him. Yeah. Or even acknowledge. I always had an awareness of God, but I just, because when you don't come from a church background, your family goes to church, or you're around people that go to church, you don't even know where to start with that. Like, of course, now I know I could have accepted him in my living room, or had, and I had a lot of these emotional moments it's times in my life, but I thought something was wrong with me. Like, why am I crying like this? But the Lord showed me later that it was him, but I just didn't have the language or the people around me. So now, especially because I have kids, right? They have friends and they have families. I'm intentionally just asking the Lord, how can I touch their heart a little bit where they can ask me questions and not me and then how can I dig there, kind of let you come into this space. So I'm very intentional with those type of interactions and where I'm at, where I show up to.
Yeah.
Because how they were impactful for me.
Yeah.
When somebody finally did say, hey, Nina, that's God. Hey, you want to come to church? Like somebody just said something like a matter of fact. And I'm like, oh, that's God. Okay. Let's go.
That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah. And, I just want to share this, may not put in the thing is that I've always not been comfortable sharing a lot of my story because I feel like it's always, how like it's too much. And how like, who wants to, this is a book, okay, sometimes, right? Like, and who wants to hear your book, and so there's been times where I have felt not insecure, but just challenged to share my story because it just sounds like too much, and I don't, I've always been conscious, like, I don't want my story to kind of lose the message of certain things. And I feel like sometimes it can when it's a lot of layers to it, but so I appreciate, just sharing that. But I also know that's the enemy too, not wanting certain parts of your story to be shared because they will impact certain people.
Yes.
And some things that I say very like matter of fact, I don't even think nothing about it, where people have come back and say, this part of your story. And now, and I'm like, I didn't even know this person. I met them here or there through even like Foursquare things. And I just shared a little piece of something and how it impacted them. So you just don't know. And this is why it's so important that we do share our story.
Yes.
Yeah.
The vulnerable parts of the story, Yeah. The parts where you don't know all the answers or where you feel like A, B, or C, and how the Lord kind of tear you down to bring you back up.
Yeah.
He breaks you to build you, because he's creating, all things work together for the good. The good is working things out in you to become more like me.
Yep.
So are you okay if we keep that? Because that was all just amazing too.
Okay. Yeah. It's fine. It's fine. I just,
Are you going to write a book?
We can shape it. Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't know. I've been told I was going to write a book. There
you go.
I don't consider myself a writer. So I would probably have to have someone like kind of, maybe one day, writing books takes a lot of work. So
yes.
Yeah. So you guys, I know some of you guys wrote, that's a lot of work. So.
It is a lot of work. Yeah, there's a lot of work. Nina, we'll get you out on this. And I think you have pulled a lot of this out already, but I'm curious if you could tell us, and we haven't asked this question in a while, but how have you learned to do ministry without hating it?
Not take it personal. I learn not to take a lot of things personal, right? Like people's behaviors, hard stuff working through. It's like how not to hate your job, doing your job, that can be how not to hate motherhood, being a mom, like I think it just, not taking everything so serious.
Yeah.
And I've learned not to take things personal. It's not a personal thing, and really work on not being easily offended.
Mm-hmm.
So if I feel offended, I'm trying to get rid of that as soon as I feel it, when I say get rid of it, take it to the Lord, kind of process it, I'm not trying to carry it and make it a whole part of my life. So for me, it's to understand God is God.
Yep.
And I am just Nina. I am just a vessel in this, and not to take things personal, and to have fun with it as much as I can. And so that I don't hate it, because as soon as you start hating something that God has put you in, I don't know how impactful you'll be. Mm-hmm. So maybe you need to take a sabbatical or break if you start hating it, to re-enter into it, because if I'm having a hard time with something, I feel like it's something the Lord's trying to work out in me. So if I hate something, it's more about me than it is the ministry.
Wow.
For sure. I know that through these podcasts, I've learned to ask the question when in dealing with specifically things like offense. Just ask the question: what's the motivation behind that? What's going on in the person's life, or what's going on in the situation beyond just our interaction that I was offended by? Because it often gives me such a deeper just insight into the where things are coming from, the person, where, and that's allowed me to drop things much quicker.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think, you become self-aware of like, why does this bother you so much?
Yeah.
And then sure. Well, maybe, it could be some childhood, it could be younger, your younger version things coming up, these insecurities and things, but rejection or not feeling part of or heard, all these things, and me being a woman and leadership, all that stuff could make you kind of, and then even if we don't say it does, we will lead from that.
Yeah.
And we'll start to view people from that. And that's where I feel like it's hurting the ministry too, because now you can't really, you're not free in your leading and you're showing up. You're kind of struggling, fighting through things that you don't have to.
Do you have, as you're just saying that, and you're working through some of these things yourself, what advice would you give to other ministry leaders that find themselves maybe not being free? How would they go? I mean, obviously we're bringing this to the Lord, but you find yourself in a place of offense. What are some things that you would talk to them about and moving forward so that they can minister in the way that God's called them to?
I'm glad you asked that, because I was going to be like asking for a friend, but but please, yes, unpack that.
Yeah, I don't know if I have like the golden answer or anything, but besides doing the normal stuff, which is if you have you talked to the person, of course, like, we're called to be peacemakers, not peacekeepers. So you might have to have some conversations, when you're in the right space to have the conversation to resolve, to see if this is even a valid offense, right? Like, to have a conversation. So it's not like, oh, I have this thing and I'm just going to forget about it and, give it to the Lord. Some things you actually going to have conversations about. I believe that to require you to have a conversation, because some things are going to be repeated if you don't, right? It's going to be a repeated offense that happens with some type of situations. So I think for me, having the conversation to get an understanding, and maybe if this is what if this is something I'm feeling that's valid, or if it's just something some part of me is feeling that's not, or is this a personality thing, like kind of discovery of which comes from conversation, right? Not assuming, right? Like having the hard conversations and not assuming anything is really big for me as a leader. I think if you assume that it's from this, they're doing this from this posture, or they're doing this from this heart, or they know what they're doing, then it's going to be a barrier, right? You got to be open to, maybe I'm getting this wrong. Maybe they're not doing it the way that I'm feeling like they're doing. It's not a personal attack. Maybe it's not, it could just be a personality thing or different things that are going on that only a conversation will kind of resolve. And of course the normal stuff, right? Like prayer, but in therapy, maybe like talking to someone, a counselor or somebody who has gifts in this area to help you process it. Like not necessarily to give you an answer, but just to help you process it. Yeah. Like I think talking through it with someone, a trusted person, someone that knows you, knows your heart, that so you can process freely without being judged and kind of allow whatever you feel, good, right, or wrong, to come out and to be processed and felt and experienced. So then you can then have the healing freedom in it. But I don't ever feel like we should just keep going in it. I think we do need to find a way to resolve it. And that's if bringing other people in it, if that's going to therapy, I just think it's important, because it is like a toxic thing that can just destroy ministries.
Well, and to even tie it back to what you've kind of been saying all along, it's just another form of showing up, because a lot of times with that hurt and everything, we're just trying to stuff it or run from it or, get away from it. And, just to, as you said, I'm going to show up in it and bring you, invite other people into that process with me.
Yeah, because showing up means that maybe there's going to be a part about myself I don't want to hear or I don't like about myself about it.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why it's hard to show up, because I have to be prepared to hear something about myself or that I don't like, or I didn't see, I don't feel like I'm that way, and I have to process. So it is this level of, the whole process, right? Again, that working all things out for our good, this good that God talks about is working things out so that we become more like him.
Yeah.
And it's not easy, it's not easy, but it's definitely doable.
That's good. That's so good. Well, Nina, this has been really, really great. Just for me, I'm not going to speak for Brenton, but I can see the look on his face that this has been good stuff. And thank you once again for being vulnerable in that space. I know some of that, telling the story, can be hard, but also I do think, and it's not just because it sounds good to say it's going to be encouraging. I mean, it's encouraging for me, and the real simplistic way of presenting of, this, all you have to do is this, and God will take care of the rest. If we could get that and actually make that part of our identity, as you said, so good.
Thank you.
Have us go so far. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I'm honored that I made it to the Ministry Without Hating It podcast. And I will say, I don't hate it. I have not liked it all the time. Right.
You're talking about the podcast or ministry?
No, I mean the ministry.
Okay.
The ministry. I have not hated it. I might not have liked a lot of the things, which around people all the time, right?
Sure.
But I have not hated it. Thank the Lord, right? But so thank you for having me. I enjoy just, hanging out with you guys and just having conversation.
Absolutely. We thank you for showing up to this space as well. And seriously, this has been great. So thank you so much, Nina.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us in another episode of Ministry Without Hating It. If you'd like to connect with our guests further, we've made ways to do so available in the episode show notes. And if you'd like to connect with us further, support the podcast, or sign up for show updates, just go to withouthatingit.com to get started. And don't forget to subscribe to Ministry Without Hating It wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss out on our future episode releases. Thanks again for listening, and we will see you next time.